Hey guys, it's me, Bridget, and I am back with another video. Today, we will be doing chapter 6 of the Women Who Run with Wolves book. Unfortunately, I had a really busy weekend, so that's why this video is a day late, but a lot of you guys have been really excited about the Women Who Run with Wolves book, and that's what I'm doing. Sorry, there was a fly on my hand. So this chapter was really long, so I'm actually going to split it into, I think, 3 parts when they'll be out every single day. So Tuesday, which is the day this video is coming out, Wednesday and Thursday, you'll be getting the 3 parts of this chapter. Before we get into this video, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when I come out with new videos. Go ahead and like this video before we even get started, because you know it's gonna be a good video and you know you like watching these videos, so give it a like. Yeah, let's get into the video. I'm really sorry if you guys see the flies flying around. There is a plant that grows directly outside of my door, and every time I open the front door, a bunch of flies come in. Try to keep them out, but it's really hard to. So yeah, they're just like freaking flying around, and I don't like to kill flies, so there's like not much I could do about it. This chapter is called The Ugly Duckling. I told you guys, every single time that we do these chapters, they like fit to my life so perfectly for no reason. Didn't realize that this was happening with this chapter until probably 5 minutes before the video while I was doing my outline, but as you'll see as we get into it, again, it hit super close to home for me. Let me know in the comments if it hits close to home for you guys too. As wild women, we know that we are not always born to wild families or wild communities. Realizing this can be very painful and hurtful. It can make us feel like we're a burden and a problem. It also can make us very angry that our families and communities don't fit our own wildishness and don't try to understand us as much as they try to conform us to them. All of these feelings of anger, hurt, and confusion over this are very valid feelings, but what's actually helpful is to let them go and move past them. We have to spend less time thinking about what our communities don't give to us and more time on finding people who do. So the story for this chapter is called The Ugly Duckling. In the book, Estes says, "It's what I would call a psychological and spiritual root story. A root story is one that contains a truth so fundamental to human development that without integration of this fact, further progression is shaky, and one cannot entirely prosper psychologically until this point is realized." So here's the story. The Ugly Duckling. It was near the time of harvest. The old women were making green dolls from corn sheaves. The old men were mending the blankets. The girls were embroidering their white dresses with bloody red flowers. The boys were singing as they pitched golden hay. The women were knitting scratchy shirts for the coming winter. The men were helping to pick and pull and cut and hoe the fruits the fields had brought forth. The wind was just beginning to loosen the leaves a little more, and then a little more each day. And down by the river, there was a mother duck brooding on her nest of eggs. Everything was going as it should for this mother duck, and finally, one by one, her eggs began to tremble and shake until the shells cracked, and out staggered all her new ducklings. But there was one egg left, a very big egg. It just sat there like a stone. An old duck came by, and the mother duck showed off her new children. "Aren't they good looking?" she bragged. But the unhatched egg caught the old duck's attention, and she tried to dissuade the duck mother from sitting on that egg any longer. "It's a turkey egg," exclaimed the old duck. "Not a proper kind of egg at all. Can't get a turkey into the water, you know." She knew, for she had tried. But the duck mother felt that she had been sitting for such a long time, a little longer wouldn't hurt. "I'm not worried about that," she said, "but do you know that that scoundrel father of these ducklings hasn't come to visit me even once?" But eventually the big egg began to shudder and roll. It finally broke open, and out tumbled a big, ungainly creature. His skin was etched with curly red and blue veins, his feet were pale purple, and his eyes transparent pink. The duck mother cocked her head and stretched her neck and peered at him. She couldn't help herself. She pronounced him ugly. Maybe it is a turkey after all, she worried. But when the ugly duckling took to the water with the other offspring, the duck mother saw that he swam straight and true. Yes, he's one of my own, even though he's very peculiar in appearance. But actually, in the right light, he's almost handsome. So she presented him to the other creatures in the farmyard. But before she knew it, another duck shot across the courtyard and bit the ugly duckling right in the neck. The duck mother cried, "Stop!" But the bully sputtered, "Well, he's so strange and ugly, he needs to be pushed around a little bit." And the queen duck with the red rag on her leg said, "Oh, another brood, as though we don't have enough mouths to feed. And that one over there, that big ugly one, well, surely he was a mistake." "He's not a mistake," said the duck mother. "He's going to be very strong. He just laid in the egg too long and is yet a little misshapen. He'll straighten out though, you'll see." She groomed the ugly duckling's feathers and licked his cowlicks. But the others did all they could to harass the ugly duckling. They flew at him, bit him, pecked him, hissed and screeched at him, and their torment of him grew worse as time went on. He hid, he dodged, he zigzagged left and right, but he could not escape. The duckling was as miserable as any creature could be, and at first his mother defended him, but then she grew tired of it all and exclaimed in exasperation, "I wish he would just go away." And so the ugly duckling ran away, with most of his feathers pulled out and looking extremely bedraggled. He ran and ran until he reached a marsh. There he lay at the water's edge with his neck stretched out and sipping as he could from the water now and then. From the rushes, 2 ganders watched him. They were young and full of themselves. "Say there, you ugly thing," they sniggered. "Want to come with us over to the next county? There's a gaggle of young unmarried geese over there just right for the choosing." Suddenly shots rang out and the ganders fell with a thud, and the marsh water ran red with their blood. The ugly duckling dived for cover, and all around there were shots and smoke and dogs barking. At last the marsh became quiet, and the duckling ran and flew as fast as he could. Toward nightfall, he came to a poor hovel. The door was hanging by a thread. There were more cracks in it than walls. Here lived an old raggedy woman and her uncombed cat and cross-eyed hen. The cat earned her keep with the old woman by catching mice. The hen earned her keep by laying eggs. The old woman felt lucky to have found a duck. "Maybe it will lay eggs," she thought, "and if not, we can kill it and eat it." So the duck stayed, but he was tormented by the cat and the hen, who asked him, "What good are you if you cannot lay and you cannot catch?" "What I love best," sighed the duckling, "is to be under. Whether it is under the wide blue sky or under the cool blue water." The cat could make no sense of being underwater and criticized the duckling for his stupid dreams. And the hen could make no sense of getting her feathers wet at all, and she made fun of the duckling too. In the end, it was clear there would be no peace for the duckling there, so he left to see if things would be better down the road. He came upon a pond, and as he swam there, it became colder and colder. A flock of creatures flew overhead, the most beautiful he had ever seen. They cried down to him, and hearing their sounds made his heart leap and break at the same time. He cried back in a sound he had never made before. He had never seen creatures more beautiful than they, and he had never felt more bereft. He turned and turned in the water to watch them till they flew out of sight. Then he dove to the bottom of the lake, huddled there, trembling. He was beside himself, for he felt a desperate love for those great white birds, a love he could not understand. A colder wind began and blew harder and harder through the days, and snow came upon frost. The old men broke the ice in the milk pails, and the old women spun long into the night. The mothers fed 3 mouths at once by candlelight, and the men searched for the sheep under white skies at midnight. The young men went waist deep in the snow to go milking, and the girls imagined they saw the faces of handsome young men in the flames of the fire while they cooked. And down at the pond nearby, the duckling had to swim faster and faster in circles to keep a place for himself in the ice. One morning, the duckling found himself frozen in the ice, and it was then that he felt he would die. 2 mallards flew down and skidded onto the ice. They surveyed the duck. "You are ugly," they barked. Too bad, so sad. Nothing can be done for such as you." And off they flew. Luckily, a farmer came by and freed the duckling by breaking the ice with his staff. He lifted the duckling up and tucked him under his coat and marched home. In the farmer's house, the children reached for the duckling, but he was afraid. He flew up to the rafters, making all the dust fall down into the butter. From there, he dove right into the milk pitcher, and as he struggled out all wet and woozy, he fell into the flour barrel. The farmer's wife chased him with her broom, and the children screamed with laughter. The duckling flapped through the cat's door, and outside at last lay in the snow, half dead. From there he struggled on till he came to another pond. Then another house, another pond, another house, and the entire winter was spent this way, alternating between life and death. And even so, the gentle breath of spring came again, and the old woman shook out the feather beds, and the old men put away their long underwear. New babies came in the night, while fathers paced the yard under starry skies. During daylight, the young girls put daffodils in their hair, and young men studied girls' ankles. And on a pond nearby, the water became warmer, and the ugly duckling who floated there stretched his wings. How strong and big his wings were! They lifted him high over the land. From the air, he saw the orchards in their white gowns, the farmers plowing, the young of all of nature hatching, tumbling, buzzing, and swimming. Also paddling on the pond were 3 swans, the same beautiful creatures he had seen the autumn before, those that so caused his heart to ache. He felt pulled to join them. What if they act as though they like me, and then just as I join them, they fly away, laughing, thought the duckling. But he glided down and landed on the pond, his heart beating hard. As soon as they saw him, the swans began to swim toward him. No doubt I am about to meet my end, thought the duckling. But if I am to be killed, then rather by these beautiful creatures than by hunters, farm wives, or long winters. And he bowed his head to await the blows. But la! In the reflection in the water, he saw a swan in full dress, snowy plumage, slue eyes, and all. The ugly duckling did not at first recognize himself, for he looked just like the beautiful strangers, just like those he had admired from afar. And it turned out he was one of them, after all. His egg had accidentally rolled into a family of ducks. He was a swan, a glorious swan, and for the first time, his own kind came near him and touched him gently, lovingly with their wing tips. They groomed him with their beaks and swam round and round him in greeting. And the children who came to feed the swans bits of bread cried out, "There's a new one!" And as children everywhere do, they ran to tell everyone. And the old women came down to the water, unbraiding their long silver hair. And the young men cupped the deep green water in their hands and flicked it at the young girls, who blushed like petals. The men took time away from milking just to breathe the air. The women took time from mending just to laugh with their mates. And the old men told stories about how war is too long and life is too short. And one by one, because of life and passion and time passing, they all danced away. The young men, the young women, all danced away. The old ones, the husbands, the wives, they danced away. The children and the swans all danced away, just leaving us in the springtime. Down by the river, another mother duck begins to brood on her nest of eggs. The end. Exile comes in many forms and is almost always due to naive and poignant oversight. It may be cruel, unjust, and painful, but the point is not to get stuck in the defining of other people's actions, but to concentrate on the defiance of the wild soul within. The book says, "The duckling of the story is symbolic of the wild nature, which, when pressed into circumstances of little nurture, instinctively strives to continue no matter what. The wild nature instinctively holds on and holds out, sometimes with style, other times with little grace, but holds on nevertheless. And thank goodness for that. For the wildish woman, duration is one of her greatest strengths." The other important aspect of the story is that when an individual's particular kind of soulfulness, which is both an instinctual and a spiritual identity, is surrounded by psychic acknowledgement and acceptance. That person feels life and power as never before. Ascertaining one's own psychic family brings a person vitality and belongingness. The exile of the unmatched child. Girl children who display a strong instinctive nature often experience significant suffering in early life. From the time they are babies, they are taken captive, domesticated, and told they are wrong-headed and improper. Their wildish natures show up early. They are curious, artful, and have gentle eccentricities of various sorts, ones that, if developed, would constitute the basis for their creativity for the rest of their lives. Considering that the creative life is the soul's food and water, this basic development is excruciatingly critical. Generally, early exile begins through no fault of one's own and is exacerbated by the misunderstanding, the cruelty of ignorance, or through the intentional meanness of others. Then the basic self of the psyche is wounded early on. When this happens, a girl begins to believe that the negative images her family and culture reflect back to her about herself are not only totally true, but also totally free of opinion and bias or personal preference. The girl begins to believe that she is weak, ugly, unacceptable, and that this will continue to be true no matter how hard she tries to reverse it. We see this across society. We as people are born to fit into value systems and belief systems which are formed well before we ever even contemplated or conceived. This doesn't work for a wild woman. It doesn't work for anyone who is born with an intuitive compass for their own journey. A community with a lack of appreciation for this soulful living will attempt to destroy the instinctual self, but that instinctual self cannot be destroyed, so they will only succeed in hiding it. Though her soul requires seeing, the culture around her requires sightlessness. Though her soul wishes to speak its truth, she is pressured to be silent. Pressure to be adequate in whatever manner authority defines it can chase the child away or underground or set her to wander for a long time looking for a place of nourishment and peace. When culture narrowly defines what constitutes success or desirable perfection in anything, looks, height, strength, form, acquisition of power, economics, manliness, womanliness, good children, good behavior, religious belief, then corresponding mandates to measure oneself against these criteria are interjected into the psyches of the members of that culture. So the issues of the exiled wildish woman are usually twofold, inner and personal, and outer and cultural. I think we find that in many areas of society and today, even just by characters like Ariana Grande or Millie Bobby Brown or Miley Cyrus that are known to break those traditional roles of what they're supposed to do, such as Millie Bobby Brown dressing so fashionably and people deciding to say that she's in some way baiting to pedophiles when really she's just dressing fashionably like a normal famous 14-year-old, or Miley Cyrus, who went through many stages of just trying to discover herself as an artist and went through those stages publicly with a ton of judgment thrown at her, or Ariana Grande, who went through a early career of being pressured to be a childish influence on the world, and then is just now coming to her real own and owning her sexuality and owning her womanhood and owning all the parts of her while still also owning her goofy side as well. Or in regular society with examples of men making all of the decisions about women's health care, sexual reproductive care, or abortion rights, or also schools making decisions on girls and dress codes that are favorable to pedophilic teachers rather than girls just living their lives. First, we'll deal with the issues of inner exile. When one develops adequate strength, not perfect strength, but moderate and serviceable strength, in being oneself and finding what one belongs to, one can then influence the outer community and cultural consciousness in masterful ways. What is moderate strength? It is when the internal mother who mothers you isn't 100% confident about what to do next. 75% confident will do nicely. 75% is a good amount. Remember, we say that a flower is blooming, whether it is in half, 3/4, or full bloom. These are the kinds of mothers, internal versus external. Obviously, the external mother is the mother that we're all raised with, the one that birthed us or took us in. The internal mother is a conglomeration of the experiences with that past mother and the way that we interpreted them, and also our experiences with any other motherly figures in our lives throughout our lives and the ways that we interpreted their influence on us. As we grow up, the physical mothers around us may change, but that internal mother will always stay an archetype of our childhood. In the book it says, in depth psychology, this entire maze is called the mother complex. It is one of the core aspects of a woman's psyche, and it is important to recognize its condition. Strengthening certain aspects, arighting some, dismantling others, and beginning over again if necessary. So based on the story, the duck mother goes through many different phases, but represents many different types of mothers. The first type of mother is the ambivalent mother. The ambivalent mother is the mother who is forced by her community to pick between tradition and the soul intuition of her daughter and of herself. She has long previously chosen to disregard her own soul, so over time she is struck by her daughter's soul intuition, but she may also, as the ambivalent mother, she does also ask her daughter to conform as well. She's pulled in every direction of fear and desire. The fear of society's punishment of herself and her daughter. She's pulled by the desire to allow her daughter's soul life to flourish where she couldn't allow herself. She's also pulled by the desire to be loved and accepted in her society and for her daughter to be as well, and also pulled by the desire to love and accept her daughter as she is and for her community too as well. In the book it says, a mother with a child who is different must have the endurance of Sisyphus. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. The fearsomeness of the Cyclops and the tough hide of the Caliban. To go against a mean-spirited culture. The most destructive cultural conditions for a woman to be born into and to live under are those that insist on obedience without consultation with one's soul, those with no loving forgiveness rituals, those that force a woman to choose between soul and society, those where compassion for others is walled off by economic tiers or caste systems, where the body is seen as something needed to be cleaned or as a shrine to be regulated by fiat, where the new, the unusual, or the different engenders no delight, and where curiosity and creativity are punished and denigrated instead of rewarded, or rewarded only if it is not by a woman, where painful acts are penetrated on the body and called holy, and whenever a woman is punished unjustly, as Alice Miller puts it succinctly, for her own good, where the soul is not recognized as being in its own right. The ambivalent mother, just as all mothers, does not act out of mean spirit, but often they are plagued by an internal ambivalent mother, which, if they are even able to see that fact, then must overcome that ambivalent mother and take on traits of vehemence, fearlessness, and fearsomeness in order to act out their own wild paths. In the book it says, for a mother to happily raise a child who is slightly or largely different in psyche and soul needs from that of the mainstream culture, she must have a start on some heroic qualities herself. She must be able, like the heroines of myth, to find and obtain these qualities if they are not allowed, to shelter them, unleash them at the right time, and stand for herself and what she believes. There is almost no way to make oneself ready for this, other than to take a deep draught of courage and then act. Since time out of mind, a considered act of heroism has been the cure of stultifying ambivalence. The collapsed mother. The ambivalent mother can no longer take the pressure, so she collapses. When a mother collapses psychologically, it means she has lost her sense of herself. She may be a malignant, narcissistic mother who feels entitled to be a child herself, but more likely, she is severed from the wildish self and has been frightened into the collapse of some real threat, psychic, or physical. When a mother is forced to choose between the child and the culture, there is something abhorrently cruel and unconsidered about that culture. A culture that requires harm to one's soul in order to follow the culture's prescriptions is a very sick culture indeed. This culture can be the one a woman lives in, but more damning yet, it can be the one she carries around and complies with within her own mind. Of the many cultural practices that we use to kill a woman's soul, this is the worst. To dictate how a woman is allowed to love or shelter her offspring. In the book it says, "For generations, women accepted the role of legitimizing humans through marriage to a man. They agreed that a human was not acceptable unless a man said so. Without that masculine protection, the mother is vulnerable. It is ironic that in The Ugly Duckling, the father is only mentioned once. That is when the duck mother is brooding on the ugly duckling egg. She laments about the father of her offspring. That scoundrel hasn't come to visit me even once." For a long time in our culture, the father, unfortunately for whatever reasons, was unable or unwilling to be there for anyone, most sorely even himself. One could easily say that for many, many wildish girl children, the father was a collapsed man, just a shade who hung himself along with his coat in the closet every night. When a woman has a collapsing mother construct within her own psyche and or her culture, she is wobbly about her worth. She may feel that choices between fulfilling outer demands and the demands of soul are life and death issues. She may feel like a tormented outsider who belongs nowhere, which is relatively normal for the exile. But what is not normal is to sit down and cry about it and do nothing. One is supposed to get off one's feet and go off in search of what one belongs to. For the exile, that is always the next step. And for a woman with an internalized collapsing mother, it is the quintessential step. If a woman has a collapsing mother, she must refuse to become one herself also. The idea that one needs a masculine figure in order to legitimize their existence as a human being is absolutely demoralizing to women's worth. Women are the rulers of life, death, and life cycle. We completely control the ability to bring life into this world. However, we may need to be pollinated by the bees in order for our flowers to bloom. The flowers can bloom from many, many seed bringings also. So, the next section is the child mother or the unmothered mother. Estes talks a lot about the ancient times, which is very according to the communal nature of women in general. Women used to have a role that was of the goddess mother, which is now known as the godmother. It was a role of the community of the villages around women who all taught women, new mothers coming up, how to be a mother. These goddess mothers would live in community with new mothers, and over many, many years and over time, they would tell stories and give revelations and protect children and just grow with the family in order to bring a woman across that threshold into motherhood. Nowadays, these teachings have been delegated to a 2 to 4 hour party like baby showers, where we may or may not get a couple pieces of advice, a couple items that may help out, and some stories thrown in about motherhood, and then we're left all on our own. In the modern world, women expect themselves to take on mothering as a completely soul journey, which leads generations of women to come into this style of self-mothering. In the book it says, "The woman who has a child mother or unmothered mother construct in her psyche, or glorified in the culture and maintained at work and in the family, is likely to suffer from naive presentments, lack of seasoning, and in particular, a weakened instinctual ability to imagine what will happen 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now. A woman with a child mother within takes on the aura of a child pretending to be a mother. Women in this state often have an undifferentiated, long-live everything attitude. a do everything, be everything to everyone brand of hyper-momism. They are not able to guide and support their children, but like the farmer's children in the Ugly Duckling story, who are so thrilled to have a creature in the house, but do not know how to give it proper care, the child mother winds up leaving the child battered and bedraggled. Without realizing it, the child mother tortures her offspring from various forms of destructive attention and, in some cases, lack of useful attention. Sometimes the frail mother is herself a swan who has been raised by ducks. She has not been able to find her true identity soon enough to benefit her offspring. Then, as her daughter comes upon the great mystery of the wildish nature of the feminine in adolescence, the mother too finds herself having sympathy pangs and swan urges. The daughter's search for identity may even inaugurate the mother's maiden journey for her lost self at last. So in that household, between the mother and the daughter, there will be two wildish spirits down in the basement holding hands, hoping to be called upstairs. So now we come to the solution to it all, the strong mother and the strong child. The book says, even if you had the most wonderful mother in the world, you may eventually have more than one. As I have often told my own daughters, you are born to one mother, but if you are lucky, you will have more than one. And among them all, you will find most of what you need. Your relationships with todas las madres, the many mothers, will most likely be ongoing ones, for the need for guidance and advisory is never outgrown, nor, from the point of view of a woman's deep creative life, should it ever be. There is incredible hope for a woman born with a damaging mother. To engage with the physical and spiritual wild mothers of the world is essential to our soul growth. We will find them on that journey. We will find their connection, no matter what. In the book, it says, as in nature, the soul and the spirit have resources that are quite astonishing. Like wolves and other creatures, the soul and spirit are able to thrive on very little, and sometimes for a long time on nothing. To me, it is the miracle of miracles that this is so. Once I was transplanting a hedgerow of lilac. One great bush was dead from a mysterious cause, but the rest were shaggy with purple in springtime. The dead one cracked and crunched like peanut brittle as I dug it out. I found that its root system was attached to all the other living lilacs up and down the fence line. Even more astounding, the dead one was the mother. She had the thickest and oldest roots. All her big babies were doing fine, even though she herself was botas arribas, boots up, so to speak. Lilacs produce what is called a sucker system, so each tree is a root offshoot with a primal parent. In this system, even if the mother fails, the offspring can survive. This is the psychic pattern and promise for those with little or no, as well as those who have had torturous mothering. Even though the mother somehow falls over, even though she has nothing to offer, the offspring will develop and grow independently and still thrive. Okay, that's all I'm going to get into for this first video. The next video will talk about the external steps that the Ugly Duckling took to find their home and their family. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for part 2. That's all I'm gonna say. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I come out with new videos. Also check out the little slide for any other videos in the Women Who Run with Wolves playlist. Yeah, okay. Bye!